Welcome to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast. And today I'm delighted to say we are joined by Jeremy Smith. Jeremy, thank you for making the journey to Manchester today.
Thank you for having me, Carl. I appreciate it.
It is an absolute pleasure. Loving the Succession cap as well.
Thank you very much.
That's great. But as always, for the listeners, please introduce yourself, who you are and the business you work for.
Who am I? So I'm Jeremy Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of Neural Voice, an AI voice solution company. My background is I did finance at university, then a master's in marketing, and then went into a sales role. So I've worked with Kyle previously. And I kind of always wanted to move into the tech space, though, and always wanted to create my own business. So saw an opportunity when the Gen AI boom started happening. Really wanted to just kind of see what I could do in that space, and love what we've built so far. And can't wait to see the future.
Brilliant. Well, the future, AI, and all of that good stuff we're going to get into later on, because I think we're going to have potentially a bit of a heated debate around AI potentially replacing SDR's roles and whether or not cold calling will be dead. Who knows? But before we do that, it'd be good to explore and go into your journey in a bit more detail. So I know you studied finance at university.
Yep.
I had a background in e-gaming as well,
Yes.
esports. So we were talking about prior to this. But how did you even get into sales in the first place?
Yeah, so big journey, really. So I started probably when I was around 15 or 16. I was really into video games, big League of Legends player, not a good League of Legends player, but played a lot of it, and really loved the esports scene. Wanted to find a route into that. I ended up working for Chandler Riggs, who played Carl in The Walking Dead, as some people might know. That was purely through luck, just right place at the right time. But he started streaming League of Legends, was regularly getting like 25,000 views, so easy to land sponsorships. And I just started cold outreaching to companies, saying, I'm working with this guy, he's getting this many viewers, he's gone up this much over time, would you be interested in a sponsorship deal? And all of them basically came back saying, yes, awesome, happy to be involved in that. So I kind of saw some potential there and wanted to start looking into the esports scene a bit more, and was basically doing any job for anybody, any esports team, any sponsorship company for free. Like, I wasn't looking to make any money at that time. I just really loved this industry and would do anything to get into it. That ended up for me working for a company called Enemy Esports. They were in the LCS at the time. They disbanded and became Rogue, who are now quite big. But they got an investor called Steve Crystal. I never met him at the start, but they got that investment, and then he was coming to the UK for a conference. So I just happened to message him on LinkedIn and say, I see you coming to LinkedIn. I'm doing a bit of work behind the scenes for Enemy. Can we have a chat? I'm really interested in being in this industry and potentially working in the US in the future. So he came over, I met up with him at like 6 a.m. at his hotel in London. We just had a really good chat, and he decided to invite me out to work with him in Vegas. So I went out that summer. I was 18 at the time, spent a few weeks with him in Vegas, meeting people, just kind of shadowing him. He was mainly an investor in the gambling scene, in the esports scene. He introduced me to the first and only billionaire I've ever met, so that was fun. And yeah, I worked with him for a few years after that on the odd job here and there, just helping him in the esports scene. But kind of that experience of outreaching to people and just getting responses really made me want to move into sales. I was like, I've made my career doing this so far, like very early stage of the career. I got responses, did well out of it. Let's try putting this into the real world and seeing what can happen.
Interesting. What a journey, and quite a few things to unpack there as well. First of all, I'm sure what everyone's thinking, Las Vegas at 18, what was that like?
Fun, but also boring. Couldn't drink at any of the hotels, not 21, couldn't gamble. I loved poker and blackjack at the time, but the whole experience of going around this guy who has a decent amount of notoriety in Vegas, worked at a lot of the hotels and a lot of their different strategies, owns a number of different hotels. Being able to go around with him and sit in all of these meetings, I learned so much in that short time. One of the big lessons I took away was I need to be less of a fussy eater. We went to so many different restaurants and stuff, and I would have the most basic stuff on the menu, and he was having this exquisite stuff, telling stories of when he ate monkey brain in Vietnam, and I was like, yeah, I'll have the pizza, please. And I was like, okay, if I'm ever going to be in big business meetings, I can't go for the most basic thing constantly.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned about meeting a billionaire.
Yes.
What was that like?
His office was fantastic. It was so nice. He was a property developer out in Vegas, originally from... where is he from? Can't remember now. But made his money in Vegas, owned some of the most expensive non-hotel properties in Vegas, and had just done incredibly well for himself. Not spoken to him since, but great conversation with him. Steve, at the end of the meeting, said to him, do you have any advice for Jeremy? And his one bit of advice was, be honest in everything you do. Like, don't make stuff up. Just go into every meeting, go into every business interaction honest. And that's why I left my first ever job, because they had me lying through my teeth to people on the phone. I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I got one piece of advice from a billionaire. That's probably the only billionaire I'm going to speak to. I'm going to listen to it.
Interesting. Very interesting, actually, and good piece of advice as well, particularly in an industry such as sales, which sometimes has the perception of people maybe not being honest and doing whatever it takes to get the deal over the line. That brings us then to your first ever experience in sales. And as you mentioned, to begin with, started at a company called Force 24.
Yes.
Which you progressed through the ranks and ended up managing the inside sales team there. But just talk to us around what that was like at the beginning, making the transition from esports into kind of a B2B tech sales environment.
Yeah, so throughout university, I kind of changed what I wanted to do. I got really into the idea of investment banking. I was fascinated by the 2008 housing crisis. I did every bit of research I could on that and understand the banking world a bit more. And then in the summer of 2018, I got an internship at a wealth management fund in London, and a hedge fund, and I got that through Steve, who I'd worked with in Vegas, and I kind of realized that life wasn't for me. I was getting up at like 5 a.m. to get to London for 8 a.m., working through till 8 p.m., getting home at like 9, 10 a.m. and p.m., and realized like I really loved the job, really enjoyed what I was doing, but I didn't want that to be my life. I didn't want work to be everything I did. I wanted friends and family as part of my life. So I kind of moved into marketing, wanted to go into that world, really liked the sound of what marketers do. And that kind of led me to the understanding of, okay, well, I've already basically done sales in the past. I've been selling myself to all of these people to get into these sort of positions that a 17, 18-year-old wouldn't do. Why not try that and see where that led? And then working with Force 24, a marketing automation company, like I had my master's in marketing. It made perfect sense for that to be a first sales role where I could see how I can hone these skills a bit more.
Interesting. And I always like to ask this just from a nostalgia perspective. Can you remember your first ever sale or meeting that you booked in that role and how it made you feel as well?
Yeah, I can remember my first ever cold call. So we had 3 days of training. So my manager, Brett, I was with him and all of us were in the same room, the boardroom of Force 24. And we got to the end of the Wednesday, so day 3, and there was a mobile number, and Brett said, just call it, see what happens. So I called it up, put all of my training into action, and got yelled at. She was screaming down the phone, how did you get my number? Where have you got it? Delete it now. Don't ever speak to me again. I was like, cool, this is how this is going to go. Exciting. So interesting start to it all. The first ever meeting I booked was actually from an email. So I think it was a really bad email as well. I just happened to get a response on it. And the sale didn't end up going through, but I got the buzz straight away. I was like, I sent this pretty bad email, got a response, booked a meeting, made money off of that. Awesome. Let's keep going.
You said your email was pretty bad. What was it about it you would maybe do differently? Now you've got all the years experience from that point.
It was so long and wordy, and like I was trying to put my marketing degree into action and talking about, I can't even remember what the content was, but I just remember it being really long. And if I saw that in my inbox, I would not be touching it. Like, I've done a lot of work in cold email outreach since with different things I've made over the years, and yeah, it was so bad. I have no idea how that worked.
Got you in a meeting anyway.
It did. I don't think it ever got me one again, but...
And your journey there then, you made the transition from basic work, well, ISR, but SDR, in terms of booking meetings, qualified appointments, to then actually going into kind of a leadership management role. What made you want to go down that path? Because in sales, obviously, different paths you can go down. Why did you want to go down that route?
So originally the team I was working for didn't have proper management. It was working under Brett, who was the sales director, also managing the account executives. Brett had never been an SDR or a BDR or whatever we were called at the time. And they were looking for a manager to come into the team because they'd just got Series A funding and were expanding the team quite a lot. So obviously you need a manager for that. I knew it wasn't going to be me. I had no experience in it, but I knew I had an opportunity to step up and start trying to lead it. So very early on, I tried to put myself in that position where I was the guy that anybody on the team would go to if they needed something. Whether it be something as simple as we've got somebody coming to the office, they need to have their coffee set down. I just made sure I was that guy every time. And when any question came, anything to do with CRM or any of the systems or automations we had, I was that guy that had that information. So then when we hired more people, we didn't have a manager yet. So I was the guy that would train them because I knew all the things about all the systems and how we do it. I wasn't the best salesperson there by a long stretch, but I was the guy that knew the information that was needed. So when when we brought on a manager for the ISR team, I was kind of their right-hand man and moved into a team lead role because, again, I had all the answers. They needed quick answers. So I kind of positioned myself to be in that role. And then when they left, I'd been their right-hand man the entire time. So it was a natural progression rather than go seek somebody elsewhere, just move me up and start managing the team. And I loved it. And I'd always wanted to be a manager because I wanted to go up the ranks within a business. And that just seemed like the best way to do it at the time.
Brilliant. And there's a couple of good lessons in there as well. It's about putting yourself out there, making sure you're going above and beyond. But what you said as well is quite honestly saying you're by no means the best salesperson there. Be curious to get your take on what people say around the best salespeople or the top performers don't always make the best managers and vice versa. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And a lot of people should stay salespeople and they're really good at it and really enjoy it. Management isn't for everybody. A lot of people like to be on the phone having those conversations. And then there's a lot of people that do suit the management lifestyle. People that understand how to train people, understand the mechanisms of sales, and often they're not the top performers. Like you see it all the time. Like people that are just being promoted because they're a high performer, the business ends up with less leads because the high performer's gone, and they're not good trainers. They're not able to get this sort of skill that they had out of other people. So yeah, it's always the case. Like you don't need to be the top performer to be a manager, and top performers don't make the best managers a lot of the time. It's a completely different skill set.
Interesting. And coming on to kind of where you are now there, you obviously worked your way up the ranks, went into a leadership position, and then more recently you've set up your own company. So before we even go into what that is and how it's maybe going to take over the world, I'm interested, what was the motivation for you to actually set up your own business?
So it was actually the day I handed in my notice at Force 24. So I handed in my notice to go to a French business that was just kind of setting up their UK division. So I was brought in to manage a BDR team, grow that and set up their go-to-market strategy. And the pay was awesome. So I was happy to go try that. So I handed in my notice to Force 24, and Adam, the CEO of Force 24, had a chat with me that day and said he was fine with me going, thought it could be a good move for me, but didn't think sales was for me long term. He said, I need to be setting up my own business. That's what I'm destined to do. Because what I would do at Force 24 a lot of the time is pick apart their stuff and try build out new things and build out new systems and automate the way the sales team worked. And I'm a tinkerer. So he could kind of see, I think he saw himself in me a little bit and saw that's what he used to do at his businesses. I just needed to go out and start something. So then when I worked for this French business, I was constantly thinking about that, like what could I build? And I'd always been quite a technical person. I did computer science, GCSE and A-level, built my own computer since the age of 13, and always loved AI. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I love interactions with droids and stuff. So I was like, how do I get into this industry? What can I do? What do I know and pain points in sales that I can start to solve?
Very interesting as well. And you mentioned a couple of the things there, but Adam, when you were leaving, said, look, it's a good move, but you need to be setting up your own business. What do you think were the traits that he maybe had seen in you that made him feel that you were someone that did need to go and do their own thing?
Me and Adam got along really well. And I think that tinkering aspect is something. He'd seen me want to constantly try climb and get to the top, which is really annoying when you're a CEO. But he could see that motivation and drive in me, knew I had some technical capability, saw me as a manager. So I guess thought, okay, this is me when I was his age, and I love doing this, so he should go do it.
Wow, amazing. And the French company, how long were you with them for?
About 6 months.
6 months. So, leave Force 24. You should start your own business.
Yep.
6 months later, the first iteration of that business, I believe, was launched pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that got launched. So I started in the business. Actually, no, it's closer to 9 months I was there. Started in the French business in September. In July, I think it was, I launched a tool called Sales Compass. So Sales Compass was a tool that would analyze somebody's LinkedIn profile and just write a highly personalized sales email to them, because I recognized all my old sales emails were crap. And personalization was the way forward. But the issue with personalization is it takes time, and directors and heads of businesses see that you're sending less emails if you start to personalize. And if they don't get wins straight away, it's why are you not sending 200 emails? You can't do that if you're personalizing. So personalization brings more wins, but you can send less. Results end up being a bit similar. So I started thinking, okay, with AI and LLMs taking off, how can I merge the two so we can send highly personalized emails at volume? And that's what we started to create there.
Okay. LLM, I know what that is through a little bit of research prior to this conversation, but there's probably listeners listening to this going, LLM, what the hell is Jeremy talking about? So for the listeners, what do you mean by LLM?
So LLM is a large language model. It's a form of generative AI. It's basically creating text. So LLMs originated from the transformer architecture, which is a paper that came out in 2016 from Google called Attention is All You Need. And it basically looked at ways to produce text based off of input from training data. So prior to the transformer architecture, it was all about recursive algorithms. Some people might be familiar with Cleverbot. It was all kind of the rage in like 2008. It was a chatbot that you could speak to, and it would speak back to you. And it was awesome. I loved that as a kid. I played with that in the library. And the transformer architecture took it to a different level. It gave context. It gave understanding to the words. And what a language model is in its most basic form is a predictive model. It says a word, and it looks at every other word it could possibly say and ranks them on probability that that's going to be the next word based on all the previous words it said. So it's a prediction model of predicting the next word. But a transformer architecture places weightings on every single word that's been said to it before, so it knows what to say next and create that probability. I'm simplifying a lot there, but...
No, I feel like I'm nerding out a little bit here as well.
Love it.
It's basically like predictive text when that first came out, but well more advanced.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting. And we're going to get into the AI stuff in a lot of detail. Do not worry about that. However, just on the business side again, so pretty much 9 months between you being advised, set up your own business, to launching Sales Compass. How did you even go about that? Like, what was that 9 month period in terms of what you actually did to create the business?
It was something I've been thinking about for a long time. Didn't really know where to start. Like, I'm not a developer. I'm a much better developer now that I've got AI to help me. I can actually make things of my own. But I started working with a friend of mine, Chris Endicott. I'd known Chris since I was 13. We made Minecraft servers together, had a YouTube channel. Our first ever business was a Minecraft server. We made a couple grand when we were like 14, so that was like millions to us at the time. And he's a great developer. He'd studied computer science at university, went on to do data science as a master's, and had always been top of his classes. And I knew he was somebody I could work with. So we started working on Sales Compass together. And then got lucky when it comes to it. Like, the hard bit of starting a business is bootstrapping a business. You have no money, you need money to live. Luckily, Chris's dad had just sold his business. He'd been a travel entrepreneur for the past 30 years. He just sold one of his travel businesses for, I think, 69 million, and then another of his businesses for about 20 million, and he was willing to take a punt on us. So I started learning about angel investment, SEIS, EIS strategies, how we could bring in cash into the business and set that up. So we were working on Sales Compass. That then kind of changed into what ended up being Neural River, which acts as an AI incubator. And then that eventually led to Neural Voice. So there's been a few things in the chain. Neural River still exists, and we brought on another CEO when I left Neural River. He's former Google, former IBM, so way more capable than I am of running that business. And then I moved into Neural Voice full-time.
Interesting. And again, not to sound like a bit of an idiot here, what is the difference then between Neural River, and Neural Voice?
Neural River is purely an AI incubator, so it hires fantastic developers that have 1 or 2 years experience or are fresh out of university to make their own AI spin-outs. So it is creating new businesses. Its entire existence exists to create other businesses. So we're technically a spin-out of Neural River, but there's no actual relationship between the two. Completely independent businesses. I'm just not imaginative with names.
Yeah, got it.
I had Neural River. I was like, okay, let's just put voice on the end of that, and that's good enough.
Why not? Okay, get it. What are some of the businesses that might be spawned off from Neural River?
Oh, I can't talk about many of them at the moment. There's a
Top
lot
secret.
of stuff being worked on, but until MVP's alive, I'm not allowed to discuss any of them, I'm afraid.
Well, I am very much looking forward to seeing and hearing what does come out in the very
That'll
near
change the
future.
world.
And again, on the finance options then, I think you mentioned about bootstrapping a business and it's difficult to get that funding at the beginning. I think a lot of people in sales typically will have people working in it, probably are quite entrepreneurial, maybe do have ambitions of setting up themselves, and that's probably the one thing that does hold a lot of people back. You mentioned a couple of other things in there, EIS and a couple of other schemes. What did you mean by those?
So first, you mentioned the sales background being a great way to set up a business, and it really is. One of the reasons I was able to get angel investment early on, and there's multiple Steves involved in this business, so it gets really confusing. So we had Steve Crystal from Vegas. Now I'm working with Steve Endicott, who's our angel investor. One of the bits he said he always liked about me is I had that sales background, but I understood the technology, which he barely ever saw. So that was really good for him. It gave him some confidence that I could talk to investors about the tech side, but understand how to sell to them. Then SEIS, EIS, so they are schemes set up by the government to help entrepreneurs start their businesses. So SEIS is a really awesome scheme. It allows businesses to raise £250,000, and then the investor that's putting that money in automatically gets 50% of that back in their next tax year. So let's say Steve gave 100 grand to us. That's not what he gave, but the maths is easy on 100 grand. So if he gave 100 grand to us, he would get 50 grand back in the next tax year. Then if the business fails, of that 50 grand left, he gets a further 40% back. So his total capital at risk is 30 grand, but he's able to put in 100 grand. So that's hugely beneficial to investors. They get up to, I think, 250 grand a year that they can put into different businesses as well. So it's really been beneficial to them, but it's also really beneficial to businesses. We've got a much lower barrier to entry. EIS is a little different. It's less advantageous to investors and businesses, but the amount you can raise into it, I think, is up to about 2 million. And there are incentives for investors under that as well. But SEIS is what most businesses in the UK will start up under because it's just a really easy way to get capital. But it's exclusive to investment in the UK. We couldn't take outside investment while raising an SEIS round. It will close it instantly. Once you've completed that SEIS and 250, you can seek external investment from other countries.
Interesting. I was not aware of that. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people listening to this.
I wasn't either. It was one of the very first things on a meeting with Steve he said to me was, do you know what SEIS is? Nope. Okay, we're finishing this conversation. Go research it and then we'll talk.
Interesting. So many things that we just don't know about. I feel like that should be definitely pushed out and advertised more. AI in sales then, Jeremy. Yep. One of the key reasons why we are here today. You believe that AI will revolutionize the way that sales organizations run today.
Yep.
I'm a bit more nostalgic and hope that salespeople exist in the form that they are for many, many years to come. First of all, AI, how do you believe it is going to impact the sales industry in, the next however many years that may be?
So, firstly, I see nostalgia as a very dangerous thing. If you live in nostalgia, you don't look towards the future and you risk becoming part of that past rather than moving forward to the future. I think there's a few different avenues AI can go down, and I think why I believe BDRs, SDRs, ISRs, whatever you want to call them, are going to die out is for multiple of those reasons. So if we look at reason one. AIs are already emailing people. They're already spamming left, right, and center. The more spam that happens, the less people open their emails, the less chance of an actual human ISR being able to send an email and get a response is. Spam was already way, way too high 5 years ago before Gen AI took over. Now it's just off the charts. People don't respond unless it's a really good email and it's the exact right email at the right time, and then it's shooting fish in a barrel. And AI can shoot more fish in a barrel than you can as a human. So I think email channel will eventually die off. When it comes to cold calling, AI is not quite there fully, but it's doing a really good job of it. But it's really good at inbound sales at the moment. And as money pours into that, it's going to get better at outbound. Now, there's two potential options when it does start doing outbound at scale. Option one, really good. People respond to it. It's making more dials than you can as a human. It's getting more leads. You don't serve a purpose anymore. Option two, it's just spamming way too much. Governments get involved. Cold calling just shuts down altogether. I could set up Neural Voice right now and call 1,000 numbers before you've even gone to your desk to pick up the phone. If I can do that, and with a good AI behind the scenes, humans aren't going to be able to compete if it's really good, and then the spam's just going to get overwhelming. Either nobody's ever going to pick up their phone again, Google and Apple will get involved and say, okay, we're not allowing unknown callers, and that applies to salespeople as well. Their numbers will be caught under it because you're still trying to call as many people as possible, and it will just get shut down. It won't work anymore.
So you believe cold calling will be dead?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's quite, we see it a lot on LinkedIn, and a lot of time it's clickbaity. You genuinely do believe cold calling will die. What time frame do you predict that will happen?
Next 5 years, maybe 2, 3. Like, as I say, I could click a button and make 1,000 dials now, and nothing would stop me doing that. There is some forms of legislation in the UK around using AI to cold call, and that I think is the only saving grace for BDRs, SDRs at the moment, but it's very grey right now. So there is the robocalling legislation that essentially says that you cannot cold call people unsolicited without with a pre-recorded message. Now that's very grey because with AI it's not pre-recorded. It is made on the fly. You are hearing that the first time that has ever been said. So it's not pre-recorded. The legislation may well change, but Starmer just a few weeks ago said, we don't want to regulate the AI industry right now. We want to let it flourish, see what happens. Let the EU regulate it and see how that turns out, but we want to be an AI superpower. So we're going to sit back, see what happens, and then deal with it afterwards. So I don't see that regulation coming into place. Now, as a business, we don't sell cold calling because I do think it's going to die. So I think it's a waste of time us doing that. But what we do serve is people handling their inbound leads, because people want information when they're becoming the inbound lead. They don't mind being called by an AI. They give permission to it when they get that phone call because they want their answers to their questions. They want to move down the sales process. They don't want to sit around waiting for ages.
Okay. We could go down a few rabbit holes here, Jeremy, which I think we should probably do.
Yeah, let's go.
One thing that piqued my interest doing a bit of research into this, for team sellers, for team that cold calling will not die, because it's been around for 150 years, I think.
But those 150 years, you've only been competing with other humans.
Well, that is true, and the technology has obviously advanced massively in the last few years in comparison to those first 130 years, for sure. So there are quite a few businesses out there, you're probably aware of them, that do advertise and sell AI SDRs. Yep. A few of them are probably big names. A lot of them have received investment at the minute as well. Every single one of them, when I was doing research, is hiring for SDRs, bar one that is hiring for account executives, and they all cite human-led behaviors as part of their role that they have to do. So for me, that just doesn't seem to make sense. Maybe I'm being a little bit of a dinosaur, but I just think if your main product is an AI SDR, why are they hiring human salespeople to actually sell? I think Salesforce did it for their AI products as well. We're hiring 150 SDRs to sell their new AI product. What do you make of that? 'Cause it just doesn't give me confidence that it will take over.
I make a few things of that. So firstly, the technology is getting really good. It's not perfect yet. So a lot of these companies, like AI SDR is a company. That is the name of one of the companies. They focus on data and they focus on email sending. They're not focused on cold calling. So the SDRs are doing that at the moment because they don't believe they have a system good enough to facilitate that yet. The other big bit is these people are training data. Like, to make a good AI model, an AI that can accurately represent a human, you need humans to replicate it on. You need that data. Hiring SDRs, if you've got the money, that's a perfect way to train the data. You've got real people doing the real job. You can just take that and essentially steal their labor. I'm not advocating doing that, but you can just take that and use that as your training data to make a better model. And then you've got, like, I don't think AI is ever going to replace AEs or people further down the line, because people want to be sold to by a human. But once they've got to that initial stage, I think that initial qualification doesn't need to be done by a human. Once that lead has started to convert, an SDR can move it a bit further. They can move it a bit further along, or just go straight to the AE. Don't know what that future will look like right now. But as you say, SDR's working for a lot of these SDR companies. It's because most of them aren't doing cold calling from an AI side now. They still need the human to do that. And I think that's what's going to disappear soon.
Interesting. Because I think the bit you mentioned there that I am a big advocate of is more the buyer. I just can't see buyers willingly wanting to purchase off robots. And at the minute, you said AI SDR, which is one of the businesses, quite aptly named. They actually weren't one of the ones hiring. So I think they were hiring an inbound SDR. So they were one of the ones that weren't necessarily hiring. You said they're not that confident in their technology yet. What do you think is the gap then? So the technology at the minute isn't good enough to replace SDRs. What's missing?
It's that human-sounding voice with the low latency. So I could give you a super realistic human-sounding voice, but the latency won't be real. So it's matching the two together. We've got a fantastic sounding voice, and we've got really low latency, but it's not perfect when it comes to human. It doesn't sound quite human. But when you're actually putting it in an inbound situation where somebody's expecting a callback, like if we look at a situation I've been in recently, I've got a colleague of mine that is coming to Leeds. He lives up in Edinburgh. We've been looking for a co-working space in Leeds when he's here. Every co-working space basically requires you to fill in a form and they get back to you about it. You can't just book it online. So I've booked with the first one that called me back, and because they had a conversation with me. Some I've not heard back from at all, so they've not got my money. And I'm looking for a space that's more than just for these few days as well. I want somewhere I can go, so they'll have my active business. If as a business you're able to call them back instantly, have that conversation instantly, your conversion rates skyrocket. And so many businesses take too long to respond. There's a stat that I keep repeating that I can send you the sources for, but essentially, if you're able to call back an inbound lead within 5 minutes of it becoming an inbound lead, it's 21 times more likely to convert than if you wait half an hour. And then even less if you wait a day, 2 days, whatever. So the sooner you can call that lead back, the sooner you can start to convert it. And most people come an inbound lead because they want to buy or they've got questions. Qualify that person, answer their questions, move them down in the sales funnel as quickly as possible.
Is there any data on that? Because I think I saw that statistic in one of your blog posts actually on the website. Is there any data yet on the difference in conversion rates if that was a human calling in 5 minutes versus a bot qualifying in 5 minutes, and what the differences would be?
There's not enough data there to support either side of it, but what our research has shown is if that AI is providing the end user value, they don't care. If it's just there to qualify them and ask them questions and give them no value, they don't like it, because why bother? But that's the same with a salesperson as well. I don't like it if an SDR calls me just to qualify me when I've become an inbound lead. I become an inbound lead because I'm interested and I have questions for you. If you just call me and qualify me, it's going to piss me off. So that's why if you're actually providing value in that conversation, people don't mind. If people get the answers that they want and can move in a direction they want, they're happy. It doesn't matter if it's a human or not at that stage. It matters when you're actually putting your credit card down and having to purchase something. People want to be sold to by a human. But in that very early stages, our research has shown it makes very little difference.
Yeah, interesting. I think in a minute or two, we should put your software to the test and actually try a couple of outbound SDR calls. And then we can probably revisit the debate. Do we think cold calling will die in a few years once we've seen what it is in its current state? My thoughts are I just cannot see a world where cold calling is obsolete. I think there will be adaptations. I think salespeople probably have to up their game. And I agree there might be some uncertain SDR roles that could potentially be replaced. But I just know the confidence I have in some of the calls and conversations that even our SDRs have. I just can never see a robot or an AI bot being able to replicate them. I could be wrong.
If you can't see that world, though, can you see the world where I click that button, make 1,000 dials, no one ever picks up a phone again, or regulation steps in to say no more cold calls altogether?
I think that is the bigger risk, though, is just people refusing to pick up the phone.
Yep.
If you're getting X amount of calls, so it's not that the people, when they do finally get someone on the phone, that they will probably be better than the AI bot. The big risk is people just choose not to pick up the phone again. But surely there'll be another way. Surely. But
based on what?
I'm not too sure. Maybe it's gut feeling. Maybe it's nostalgia. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just cannot see something that has been an art form and a profession that people that we speak to do so well just being obsolete.
Because at the end of the day, like from a business's perspective, using an AI SDR that's making cold calls or using an actual SDR, the results are the same. They're looking for the exact same thing. So if there's regulation going into one, it would hit both at the same time because the goals are the same.
But it's not too dissimilar to emails now, is it? Google and Yahoo changed theirs now.
Yep.
And it just basically means that salespeople or the technologies that they use have had to massively up their game and change the way that they do things. I think cold calling is much better than email, but there are still people out there that are getting success from that channel.
Yeah.
Probably a lot less, and it's probably the best people at it. They're getting that success now. Whereas you mentioned the example earlier of your first meeting, but that probably is not happening anymore.
No.
But yeah, there was something I read as well on... I think it was TechCrunch, so you probably know a lot more about this world, so I'll make sure I've got the information right. It was from a guy that spoke on stage at SaaStr, the big SaaS event, I think it was in the US, and he said it's not to say that AI won't work, it's to say that many of us don't know how to use it at the minute, and that was in reference to the fact that there's a lot of businesses, such as AI, SDR, that seem to be growing in revenue, but actually there's no real data to suggest that the businesses they've sold to they've actually seen an increase in sales yet, which I thought was interesting. What do you make on that piece?
So to start, if we're discussing AI SDR, they have guarantees in it. So their starting package, I think, costs about £900 a month. If you go monthly by month, if you do annual, I think it's about $500 a month. And on that, they guarantee you get 3 meetings that are qualified opportunities. If you don't, you get money back on it. So people are seeing results if their revenue's coming in. Otherwise, their revenues would disappear quickly. So that's the only data point I actually know about them that I can really say about it. But it is also the Wild West out there. People are trying new things. Just as salespeople try different techniques, different things are being tried in the AI world. A lot of them will fail miserably. But it's the few that succeed that will change the way this industry works. You only need 1 or 2 different ways of AI being used to change everything.
So we're going to get into testing the neural voice software now. We're going to do a couple of example cold calls. So Jeremy, I know you've set it up and been working on this. Just for the listeners, what is the scenario that we are going to be testing?
Yeah, so it's going to be giving you a call, Kyle. It knows you work for This Is Prime. I've given it that information. It knows you're a sales director. And I gave it about 2 lines of information about This Is Prime. And then it's got some information about neural voice and how to sell neural voice. Now, I set this up in about 10 or 15 minutes. So it shows how much you can do with so little time. And then the more time you add in, the better you can make it as well. Obviously, we don't sell cold calling, but it's a good fun example of how this technology can be used in the future and how it's going to get better over time as well.
Neural voice, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
Great to hear. I wanted to reach out because we work with recruitment agencies like This Is Prime. A lot of recruitment teams tell us they struggle with timely follow-ups to candidates. Does that resonate with you?
Not really. I'm actually just about to go into a meeting as well.
I completely understand, Carl. Just to clarify, how are you currently handling follow-ups with candidates? Are you finding that process efficient?
Look, can you just send me over an email? Now is really not a good time.
Absolutely, I can send you an email. Just so I don't assume, is this something on your list of priorities right now?
Potentially. Yeah, it might be.
Perfect. If it's important to you, it's important to me. I'll send over the information today. When would you like to reconnect on it? How about Thursday at 2 p.m.?
I've not got my diary at the moment, but if you send me the email, then yeah, just feel free to follow up.
Sure thing, Kyle. I'll send that email over. Just out of curiosity, is there someone else on your team who might be more focused on improving candidate follow-ups?
No, I would be the best person. It's just now's not really a good time.
I get it, Kyle. Thanks for clarifying. I'll send over the info, and I appreciate you being the right person to discuss this. I'll check back in a few days to see if you have any questions. Talk soon.
Well, there we go. First one. What did we make of that one? Immediate thoughts and feedback.
Yeah, I think it handled the objections well. It's how I would have told most of my team in the past to handle those objections. Didn't let the call go when you tried to push it off. So I think he did a fairly good job on it. I added in some background noise just before this call. I didn't have that turned on originally, but I quite like that. Some people really hate it because it's really inauthentic, but I like it. It kind of adds to the atmosphere for me. What did you make of it?
I didn't mind the background noise, to be fair. I think, if anything, it's probably more representative of what it would be like in a real sales floor and a sales environment. I did quite like the fact that they didn't just give up. There was probably 3 occasions where I said, send an email, not got my diary in a meeting.
Yep.
Thought that was pretty good.
So already better than a lot of basic SDRs in that sense. Like, a lot of people early in their career will give up quite quickly.
Potentially, yeah. I think this is where the debate comes in where do you draw the line on maybe quite transactional sales roles and maybe perceived lower quality versus there's some SDRs out there that are having really, deep, high-level conversations.
Yeah.
So, yeah, potentially better than some in terms of the aspect of not giving up. Probably not than others. But I think the only thing I would say, you can still tell that it is an AI and it is a robot. That's probably my main concern, is the buyer being on the receiving end. As soon as there's just something click inside you go, I'm less likely to buy or want to move forward or just not trust this person. I think trust is probably the key thing.
And that's why we focus on inbound leads as well right now. Like, it sounds really good. It's not quite human yet. Humans make mistakes. There's ums and ers in there. It's not quite as clean and fluid. But these models are improving every single day when it comes to voice replication. So how it sounds today is not how it will sound in a year's time. Like, if we look at neural voice a year ago, didn't sound this good. So we're not far off from that basically sounding exactly like a human. If you look at some of OpenAI's voice models, they have those natural speech intonations, those questions, those ums and ers automatically. But their latency is too high at the moment, so it's not good for this scenario. But if we look at the model we're using right now for the voice, a year ago, the latency wasn't good enough to use it for this. Now it is. So it's improving every single month, every week, every minute in this area, so it's not far off from just sounding like you. And we can clone people's voices as well. We've done that in the past for people. So we could have a Kyle SDR that calls thousands of people a minute.
Yeah, I don't know if we deserve. The world needs that many Kyles picking up the phone. But let's do another example then. So on the first one, I wasn't really giving anything away. It'd be interesting to see how it navigates a conversation when a little bit more information is shared. So let's go for another one, shall we?
George from Neural Voice. How are you today?
I'm really well, thank you, George. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. I wanted to reach out because we've been working with other recruitment agencies like This Is Prime, and I thought you might find our approach interesting. Many agencies are struggling with slow follow-ups to candidates, which can lead to losing top talent. Is that something you've experienced?
Yeah, sometimes. It is a very competitive market at the moment. Good candidates are really hard to find, and sometimes, we do miss out on talent to other businesses or other recruitment companies.
That makes total sense. It's a highly competitive landscape. What we've seen is that agencies using our AI-powered voice platform can engage candidates instantly after they apply. This helps ensure that no one falls through the cracks. How are you currently handling follow-ups with candidates?
So at the moment, it's quite a manual process. So our team will pick up the phone when they receive an application. Typically, we try and do that as soon as possible. As soon as they apply, the better, or the sooner they apply, the better. If we don't catch them the first time, we'll then try again with another call later on in the day. And then we'll also follow up with a message and an email as well.
That sounds like a solid approach, but it must be time-consuming, especially when you have many applications coming in. With Neural Voice, you could automate that initial outreach, ensuring candidates are contacted within seconds of applying, while your team focuses on nurturing the best leads. Would you be interested in exploring how that could work for your team?
Potentially, yeah. I'd like a bit more information first, though, please, if possible.
Of course. I'd be happy to send you more information. Just to clarify, is this something that's a priority for you right now?
I wouldn't say it's a top priority, but it's something that is definitely on our radar for sure.
Got it. I appreciate your honesty. Would it make sense for me to send over some details, and maybe we can reconnect later this week to discuss it further? How does Thursday at 2 p.m. sound?
Thursday at 2 p.m. We actually run one of our training days every Thursday afternoon. So Thursdays at 2 p.m. don't work. Have you got any other times available?
No problem at all. How about Friday at 11 a.m.? Does that work for you?
Yeah, that works for me.
Great. I'll send you the information and an invite for Friday at 11 a.m. Can I confirm your email address?
Sure, it is Kyle at thisisprime.co.uk.
Perfect, Kyle. I've got that noted down. Looking forward to our chat on Friday. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out. Have a great day.
You too, George. There we go. Got George booking in meetings.
Yeah. What do we think of that?
I think it was better than the first one. I probably feel the same, to be honest. I feel it was able to engage in conversation relatively well. It was clearly evident it wasn't a human. And I think that's the thing that I do worry about is I feel like the best sales are done when it's a genuine human and human connection. And that's probably just little things that were lacking. And even the way they said this is Prime as a business, that in particular sounded really robotic.
Yep.
But the pros are, it didn't give up on kind of light fob-off objections at the end, which I thought was pretty good. It was able to understand me, a relatively colloquial accent, which is quite impressive. Yep. Some people when I call don't even understand me now, which was good. And yeah, it was able to understand things like I can't do Thursday afternoon, and then straight away was able to suggest another time. So I thought it was good.
Let's remove the voice from the equation and focus on what's being said. How would you review that as a sales director if that was one of your team saying those words in their voice?
So just the words and not the tone?
Yeah, let's ignore the tone. And we know the tone's a big part, but we also know this area of the industry is improving massively at the moment. So if we focus on what's being said and the actual script it followed or the objections it handled, how would you rate that if a person said that?
Out of 10?
Yeah.
I'd probably say down the middle of 5.
Okay.
I would say it certainly wasn't perfect. What I would like one of our SDRs to do is probably just go into maybe the pain in a little bit more detail. So, for example, the pain was that we were missing out to competition. So maybe a few more questions around how often is that happening? How long has that been happening for? Is probably what I would have expected to get it higher than a 5.
Yeah. And that's why I love this technology, because as a sales director that works with people in your industry, you know what it needs to do. I could now give you our system and you can go and make those changes. You can say that you want it to delve into points more. If a pain point is uncovered, delve into it, ask follow-up questions, prompting it like you would any AI. Like, as I said, I spent 15, 20 minutes making that one. I had it go through the basics of a sales call, but we can add so much more detail in those different stages as well. And you can basically teach it how you would teach a salesperson. You can give it the information. You could give it the playbook that you give your sales team, and it will do its best to replicate that.
Yeah. Interesting. I'd love to maybe do that and see how it goes, but I don't know if we've got time for that now. But maybe
not right
afterwards, yeah, I'd love to see how it learns and the speed in which it learns, maybe versus a human SDR as well.
Now, the bit that would happen for a customer after that call takes place is, firstly, that meeting would be booked, so we can integrate with over 150 different CRMs and booking tools. So that if it's Calendly or if it's Chili Piper, that meeting would be booked in the calendar of yours as the prospect and the salesperson, whoever we want that to be. And also those notes would instantly enter the CRM. Something I always had issues with any of my salespeople. People don't enter their bloody notes. And that's really important. As a sales manager, as an AE that's taking that lead later on, you need to understand the context of the conversation. So if you've got specific qualification criteria that it needs to fill out, it will fill it out in those boxes. If you've got qualification questions that have to be asked and answered every call, it will ask those. If you tell it to ask those, it will fill in the relevant fields on your CRM, give you the notes, give you the recording, so anyone can go in and review it. You've also got the Neural Voice platform that has every single call any of your AI agents have ever said, so you can go back and review all of those, see the data, and get a holistic view of what's going on, and then you can start to learn from it as well, like you would with a conversational intelligence platform for your sales team. You can go in and improve the AI and change it based on the feedback and the calls that you're getting.
Yeah. And we don't want this to necessarily be doom and gloom for salespeople listening to this, because we love sales.
Yep.
We believe that a business without a salesperson, I mean, you'll have salespeople as well in your business to help it grow, of course. So what's your take on the future in terms of what sales looks like, and maybe advice and tips you would give for people that are occupying and working in an SDR, BDR role now.
Yeah, you need to start thinking about leveling up. Most people stay in an SDR role for around like 4 or 5 years max before they move up to an AE or move into a different field. So I think current SDRs don't need to be as concerned, because I think this is a 2 to 5 year process of this actually starting to replace SDRs. I think people considering going into the roles need to be more aware of it and start looking at how can you move and level up your skills so you're focused on the closing rather than the chasing. And that's what we're focused on here at Neural Voice. It's not to replace salespeople, it's to make sure their time is better spent closing the deals rather than wasting time calling people that aren't picking up the phone in the first place. Like, if your connect rate's like 5%, how much of your day are you wasting making pointless dials that aren't having any effect? Let the AI do that, have the conversations, and then you can focus on closing the deals and the leads you actually have.
So that sounds reassuring for most salespeople, to a certain extent.
I hope so.
To a certain extent. So you said closing. Any other areas you believe that maybe salespeople should be leveling up and improving in to make sure they can basically thrive with the introduction of AI?
So firstly, if you're a salesperson and you're not focused on leveling up, in my opinion, you're a bad salesperson. Every person in sales should constantly be looking at how can I remain competitive and be the best version of me. And it's your best interest to do that. Your livelihood comes from your ability to sell. If you're not trying to get better, you're screwing yourself. So constantly be reading everything you can, listening to podcasts, listening to any information that you can retain and start to level up your skill set. Whether that be in closing, whether that be in lead generation for now while it's still a thing that exists, just constantly focus on how you can do that next bit. Like, for me, books were a huge thing when I was in sales. And as I said, I wasn't the best salesperson, but I had a lot of knowledge under my belt. Whether or not I could use it well, that's a different question. But I was able to use it to help my sales teams grow and level up as well. So I think it's just all about making sure every day you're learning something on the job that you can then use the next day to improve yourself. It's all about those marginal gains. Like, it's a game of inches, as Al Pacino said. Like, every single inch gets you closer to that mile and that 2 mile, that marathon. And if you manage to increase 1% every single day, or even 0.5%, that stacks up super quickly.
And to come back onto your journey, actually, then, what were the things that you kind of looked to, whether that be books, podcasts, whatever it may be, that you would recommend people actually listen to now to get better in sales?
I've had that question asked of me a lot recently, and there's 2 books I always go back to that had a huge impact on me. So one was at the very start of my sales journey, and then one was just as I was leaving Force 24 to go work for the French business. So that first book was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. A lot of people have probably heard of it. If you haven't, it sounds really sad and pathetic, How to Win Friends, but it's such a great book. It was written in the 30s, and it really changed the way I thought about conversation and how I thought about interacting people. And it makes you just a better person to be in a room with, which helps so much in the world of sales. And everything I learned from every other sales book or something specific to cold calling or something can be taken back to the basic lessons of that book. And then another book that hugely impacted me was one recommended by my commercial director at Force 24, Nick Washburn, was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff Jocko Willink pushes these days, but I love that book. So obviously he was a Navy SEAL, and it all comes back to being in command and taking ownership over everything you have influence over. Like, if Neural Voice went down today, that's not my dev's fault. That's my fault. This is my business. And they're not doing it on purpose. A mistake has happened. It's my job to take ownership of that to any of our customers, to any of our investors, and own that. And then help them so the mistakes don't happen again, and how they can upskill to make sure everybody's constantly improving. But at the end of the day, anything that happens in my business is my fault, and I will take complete ownership of that. And that helps everybody feel a lot more comfortable in their role, knowing they can speak to me openly, and knowing for investors and customers, they know I'm not going to make excuses like, oh, GCP went down. Okay, well, if GCP went down, we should have had another option that we could move on to straight away and have backups. If any of our providers go down, that's my fault for not seeing that beforehand and having a way to deal with that so it doesn't affect my customers. And that brings a lot of people a lot of assurances that you're not just going to make up some bullshit excuse for what's happening.
Probably quite relevant, both good books. I've heard Extreme Ownership. Someone else on the podcast, I think, recommended that one as well. But I think that's probably relevant for what we've been saying around salespeople now as AI does start to come in, take ownership over the things that you can control and upskill on and improve on for sure. We're coming on to kind of towards the end now and the conclusion, but I'm interested to know what is the future for you and the business at Neural Voice, and what does 5-10 years look like from now?
Yeah, so we completed our pre-seed round about 6 months ago. We're now in our seed round. So the pre-seed round allowed us to grow the technology and make sure it was a strong fundamental technology. That really got proven in back in June last year. I'm making a bit of a segue here, but it's something fun to talk about. So Steve Endicott, our first investor, ran to be MP in Brighton and Hove. And we created an AI clone of him, known as AI Steve. And that ended up with over 30,000 people speaking to it. It had his voice, his policies, and ended up on like Fox News in the US, ITV, BBC, The Guardian here.
I feel like I saw it somewhere.
It was huge at the time, and that was our first test of our technology. We'd taken this money to build out the MVP, but you don't really know how it's going to work until it's thrown into that environment where it's getting thousands of calls a day, and it really showed it could scale. The only issues we had were it leaked by a Twitter thread on the Sunday. We were planning to announce on the Tuesday about it. Because when you sign up to be an MP, you can use your name and you can use a known as. So his known as was AI Steve. So he appears on the ballot as AI Steve. Somebody saw that in Brighton there was going to be an AI Steve on the ballot, Googled it, found it, and it got put on a politics thread on Twitter and ended up getting millions of views that evening. So the only issue we had was I hadn't increased the billing limits yet. So we hit a billing limit because we were getting thousands of calls on a Sunday evening. But that was fantastic. What was the question again? I got
question was, where are you going?
Where are we
going?
We're going to keep building from here. So we're in our funding round. We're looking to raise a £1 million round, which is to help build out our commercial team so we can sell Neural Voice to more people, and then our research and development team so we can keep improving the AI that's under the hood to make it better than everybody else's. Where we see it going from a few years' time, we want to keep growing the revenue. We want to keep growing the profitability. And then we'll probably exit to somebody in 5-6 years' time, and hopefully I'll make a whole lot of money in the process and go start another business. I don't know what I'd start because I bloody love this, but I've always said as well, if Neural Voice failed tomorrow, I'd make another business. Like I love what I do more than anything.
Wow. Let's say it did fail. I'm sure it won't. What do you think you would do next?
Oh God, I don't know. Something in AI again. One thing that I think there's a huge gap in the market for, which people are trying to serve and serving badly, is LinkedIn tools with AI. As a founder, I need to do so much on LinkedIn. None of the AI tools out there are any good. They don't serve the actual problem. So I think there's a gap in the market there for a good one. I don't have any time to explore that, but if it failed tomorrow, maybe that's what I'd look at. Maybe I'd look at something else in the voice space. I don't know. I try not to dwell on those things too much because I'm somebody that can easily get distracted. So if I have an idea, I'll think about it for 5 seconds and then think, okay, nope, I'm not thinking about that too much. I'll focus on it too hard.
Brilliant. And I know you mentioned that one of your goals is to go back to Vegas as well prior to this.
Yeah, I've always kind of said that if we exit at some point and I get a good chunk of cash from the exit, I will go to Vegas, spend the 10-15 grand, whatever it is now, to enter the World Series of Poker, just so I can say I've played in the World Series. I'll probably go out in the first few hours and it's a 5-day event, but it'll be fun.
Well, we'll look out for hopefully seeing you in a few years at the World Series in Rio in Vegas. Yeah, hopefully. And to kind of come back to the reason we do this podcast, because we've gone on quite a few different tangents here today and tested out AI, replicating, an SDR call. The whole point of this is we want to really champion sales as an industry. And for too long, there's been a negative stigma and perception attached where people won't even consider going into sales because of people thinking it's bit old school, Wolf of Wall Street, all of that stuff that we've spoken about before. And I do worry that based on a few of the things we've spoken about today, there could be even more people now that might think, actually, should I really go into sales? My job won't exist in a few years. But we do believe that sales will be a profession that will continue to thrive, maybe in a slightly different way in the next few years. What's your kind of final closing words on maybe what you're doing to change the perception of sales? But actually, if someone was listening to this that's working in sales or wanting to get into it, why should they continue on the path that they're on?
Yeah, there's different types of sellers everywhere. There are bad eggs. There are the Wolf of Wall Street type salespeople, and it's not all like that though. The bit I love about sales is to be really good at it and to make a shit ton of money. You don't need a degree. You don't need experience or anything. You just need to learn and be good at it. Like, so many sellers all over the UK are making hundreds of grand a year, closing great deals that don't have degrees. There's no barrier to entry other than being a good social person that's able to focus and put their eye on the ball, see the prize and work towards it and improve every day. And that's why I love the sales industry. And that will always exist because people will always want, as I've said, people want to be closed by people. So it's always focusing on how to move into that closing role. Yeah, sales has a bad rep. Glenn Ross, for example, that great film. You get every type of salesperson in that film. Some of them are the scumbag ones, some of them are the dickhead managers, but some of them are the people that just work really hard to move up the pegs and learn and do their best. And there's always those people in every sales team. And that's what makes me love the sales industry.
Love it. So, despite the changes that are coming, salespeople, you are here to stay, maybe in a slightly different capacity, which is news to our ears. But Jeremy, thank you for coming today, and thank you as well. Really appreciate the first call. We obviously tried to really test the software, but appreciate you just being really open canvas and kind of giving it a go and demonstrating it. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. And if anyone wants to try any AIs, we have them on our website. No sign up required, no credit card. You can just speak to a character, whether that's a doctor character. Don't take its advice. It's a demo. There's sales characters. There's car salesmen. Just give it a go.
Yeah, I tried the Tesla one, actually.
Fantastic.
Prior to this, but no, Jeremy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon.